Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Life Podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Nathan, here with my co-host, Pastor Matt.
Hey, guys.
Now, Pastor Matt, how are you doing today?
We're running a little late today. It's a little bit awkward, but all in all, pretty good.
Yeah, we had to do a little bit of pivoting due to some scheduling issues. As we had mentioned last week, my wife Alexis was going to join us due to some work conflicts and other issues with the scheduling of it all. It had to be pushed out to a later date. So stay tuned when we are able to have her on talking through some stuff. But we are still here. We are bringing you a fresh episode this week. However, a couple quick housekeeping notes before we dive in today.
A little caveat.
Next week is Thanksgiving, Black Friday, all that stuff, and we are going to be taking the week off. We had originally wanted to get some kind of an episode put together, but I don't think that is going to come together as we hoped. So next week we will have an episode replay. It will be a good one though, so definitely still tune in, still listen, check that out. And then we will be back, and this is where it's going to be really exciting. When we come back in December, if all goes according to plan, and that's a big if, when we come back in December, we will have a new intro, both with the audio and the visual for those of you who are watching, as well as dedicated social media channels to the Faith Life podcast. So what you're going to want to do is get ready, get set, because in 2 weeks, you are going to want to go to our new Facebook page and make sure you follow that. You're going to want to go to our new Instagram account. Make sure you're following that. The TikTok, everything. The TikTok. That makes me sound so old.
Yeah, call up the
Google.
Google.
Go to the TikTok. And make sure you're following us on all of the dedicated Faith Life podcast accounts. Share it with your friends. And you might be asking, well, wait, why are you guys doing that? What's the point of kind of separating it out? And we've talked about this, but just to let you guys know as well, reiterating this is that we want to make sure that people know that this podcast is not just for people at Discovery Fellowship Church. While it is for the people at Discovery Fellowship Church, this podcast, the idea behind it is for you, the Christian who is living in a world that is increasingly against what Jesus stands for and the values and ideas of what it looks like to follow him. Our culture tends to go very different, or at least there can be conflict. And so we want to help equip you to grow closer to Jesus in your everyday life. And as you run into situations where people ask a question, or there might be some tension, or there might be just things you haven't thought of, we want to just help build you up so that you are able to look more like Jesus every day and introduce others to him as well. And so we want a dedicated podcast site, social media, and all that stuff to make it crystal clear that this is for everybody, not just Discovery Fellowship.
Love it.
And as always, if you have not done so already, though, right now, today, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you downloaded it. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you leave us a comment, and you too can be a part of the show by emailing podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com. Now, Matt, in 2 weeks, is that going to be different? Should we have a different contact email address?
It's a good question. Stay tuned and find out.
Stay tuned. You'll find out. Now, there's one more thing to say about this switch over that's coming in a couple weeks. If you are currently subscribed to this podcast feed, you are already getting the downloads through audio on podcast feed, you won't have to change anything. We're going to just rebrand that one to Just Faith Life. And what we'll be doing with the audio feed specifically is the sermons of Discovery Fellowship are actually going to be getting their own complete sermon podcast feed that you can subscribe to. So if you want to keep hearing the sermons as well, it'll just be a separate subscribe to get those. But for the Faith Life content, just stay right where you are on your audio podcast feed.
Love it.
Whew.
That's
all,
exciting.
those are all the housekeeping issues to take care of. But let's jump into the news.
All right.
Man alive.
Is there anything happening?
Okay, so this is one that I thought was really cool.
Okay.
So often the news can be depressing, or it can be upsetting, or it can just be, I don't know, just kind of sad. So this one is nice.
Okay.
The headline reads, earliest inscription declaring Jesus is God discovered in Israel. one person said, the greatest find since the Dead Sea Scrolls. So what they found beneath the floor of a prison in Israel, an engraving, probably 1800 years old. So we're getting the year 200 or earlier, right around in that time. And what it says in Greek, ancient Greek, the God-loving Akeptuos has offered the table to God, Jesus Christ, as a memorial. Now, it also has some pictures of fish on it, which is very Christian symbolism and imagery used at the time. Now, you might be saying, well, what's the big deal? Obviously, Jesus is God, and so Christians said that even that early, because this is pretty early. 200 is early. There has been a lot of critical of Christianity movements and ideas in the past couple hundred years that have tried to say that the idea that Jesus is God was a late development, right? There are people who have scholars and things like that, again, critical of Christianity, have said not until way later, 300-400, did any Christian think Jesus was God. That's a late invention. And they'll say things like the earliest gospels, like Mark, don't show that. And that's a whole other discussion. We could talk about that. It's interesting. But oftentimes people will go to like, Constantine, when he Romanized Christianity and brought in this idea that Jesus was God and things like that. And so finding that old of an inscription saying that that people believe that Jesus was God confirms what we've always said, which is the church has always believed that Jesus was God.
Huh.
So it's kind of cool. I like
That's a pretty cool find.
Yeah.
Along the kind of cool realm, but then this one leans toward kind of confusing as well.
Okay.
Do you remember several years ago, a artist duct taped a banana to a wall and it was art?
Yes, I kind of do remember that.
So that banana, well, it's a different banana now.
Okay.
But that piece of art just sold for $6.2 million.
Why?
Right? That's the big question.
Can we do that? If we, all right, if we tape up a banana on the wall here, I guess that we can't that's too derivative. We're going to tape up a kiwi.
Here's what's weird to me. First of all, I don't think if you or I did it, it would be considered art. This was done by like an artist.
Right.
And everyone's like, it's so profound. The way that he's able to kind of mock the whole modern art movement while creating art in itself is a beautiful picture. Yeah. Anyway, the weird thing is that it's a banana.
Right.
A real banana that goes rotten within a couple of days of it just being taped to a wall.
Couldn't you I guess you spray some sort of like clear adhesive type thing over it, like a plastic coating maybe?
Yeah. So
but does that ruin the art?
Here's what it is. So Catalan, who's a noted prankster, he's the one who created this piece of art, and he's also does other art stuff, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, it comes with a certificate of authenticity.
Well, that's good.
And installation instructions for owners to replace the banana if they wish when it rots.
If they wish. It's really tough. Put a piece of tape.
So someone paid $6.2 million to, for the rest of their life, have to put a new piece of duct tape and banana on a wall. Away. But to have a piece of paper that says that they bought the original art, which isn't the original because we're 5 years past the original installation and it's been changed many times.
Well, so here's my question. Does it, okay. Are there any sort of like tax benefits to art supporting arts? Could this be just an elaborate money laundering scheme?
That's hilarious. I don't know. It could be. A crypto dude is the one who bought it.
Well, okay, so maybe he just has a lot of money and wants to feel like he's cool.
That's true.
Okay.
Oh, maybe Catalan's not actually an artist.
See? It was just his bro, and he wanted to get a tax.
Well, no, he's a comedian, a tragedian is what this is saying.
A what?
I don't know. Apparently
Okay.
he's known though.
Oh my goodness.
But still, it's a banana duct taped to the wall. $6.2 million. I don't get it.
Yeah,
Someone
see-
explain it to me. Why does this matter? Because to me, that costs a total of maybe 40 cents on a bad day.
Because it's not just the banana, it's the concept of it. You are paying for a concept.
But conceptually speaking, can't I tape a banana to the wall and laugh at it just the same?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, I guess this is why I am not a art critic, because I would be too critical of art.
All right, so I've got another one, and this is there. This is weird. All right, you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
This is why we don't trust the media, and this shows a weird. I don't know if duplicitness is the word, but all right. So I'm gonna call your attention to Time Magazine. In January of 2023. Okay, so we're going way back.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Way back. They wrote there's this headline. Why ultra processed foods are so bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Like, ultra processed foods, they're not good.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, putting all that chemical in your body probably, and yeah. All right.
August of this year.
Okay. Like a couple months ago.
What if ultra processed foods aren't as bad as you think?
Okay.
Now, what gets weirder about this is I had to do the Wayback Machine to look at this in August, because I looked at literally the exact same article, except now it says why one dietitian is speaking up for ultra processed foods.
Okay.
So why did they change? First of all, why did they change the headline? Because the first one is like a directly opposite of one they had earlier.
Right.
But then recently it's changed.
Okay.
What maybe not conspiracy minded my part of me, but the thing that I find interesting, and I hate to go back into this, but we're going to get political for a second.
Uh-oh.
Okay. There was a person who was going to be running for president this year. His name was RFK.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that he, formerly Democrat, but now a part of Trump's cabinet.
Okay.
Okay. One of his big things is speaking out against ultra processed foods, dyes, things like that. Artificial dyes in food, all that stuff he is against. Now, what is really interesting is that in his new appointment, which what did Trump put RFK as? It's something health related.
Yeah.
Right? It's and everything is so funny. Dire consequences. Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay.
Because he is a part of Team Trump, and because he is speaking out against it, ultra processed foods, are we now having other parts of media coming to the defense of ultra processed foods? Because as long as it's against, if Trump says it, I got to just go against it.
Yeah. So I guess
that's the conspiracy mind part.
I guess because the original new article was in August.
Why are they changing it right now?
Well, I wonder if they're changing it because they got backlash
because of that.
Yeah, because people started looking into it. So let's change the article to reflect that it's.
But
we found new information where this one dietitian's in favor of him.
Here's the question. I don't have the answer right away. When did RFK switch over to Team Trump and drop out of the race?
Right.
And that's what he's been talking about since this summer.
That could be.
So did the original publication of this article, and if so, it's like, is that really what we've come to?
Right. Well, it brings up the question of like the integrity of journalism, right? And is there any?
No.
Or I'm going to try and be let's think the best of people for a minute.
Good luck.
I know. January 2023, all of our data was pointing towards ultra processed foods are just terrible for us. We use them a lot here in America, and we have one of the worst health rates in the world, right? As far as the health of our people go. And so correlation doesn't always equal causation, but they've done a lot of research, and it seems to be pretty evident that ultra processed foods are bad. But we're now a year and a half plus past that, almost 2 years past that date.
And
We learn new things. Science itself doesn't change, but our exploration of science and our understanding of science changes, right? And so maybe this one dietitian found that it's not quite as bad as we thought it was. It's probably still bad or not good. I don't know. I didn't read the article, so I don't know all the details, but that would be me trying to think the best of it is they're just giving us the newest information that's coming out.
Yeah. So you're right. It looks like after the backlash on the title is where a lot of the changing came from. But the fact that they even do this, all right, here's people's responses. The author argues that ultra-processed foods shouldn't be demonized as they are more affordable, which outweighs the long-term health issues, including obesity, cancer, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes.
Okay, so let's just do some super quick math.
Okay.
I'm not even going to make up numbers. We're just going to assume things right now. Let's just say that like my ultra-processed food costs $1, and my non-ultra-processed food costs $2. So it's twice as much. $1 to $2 is not a big deal, but when we're looking at $100 a week versus $200 a week, that is a big deal, right?
Yep.
So twice as much.
Okay.
So let's say over a year, I'm spending a few $1,000s more on food in order for it to be a little healthier. Okay. Sure. I might want to go the ultra processed route.
Right.
Because that's cheaper. It's more affordable. And that's a good benefit. But in 10 years, when I have all those diseases, and now I'm paying $100,000 in medical bills.
Well, not if you're poor.
Right. But I mean, and that's all assuming that
if you're on,
all the health insurance stays the way that it is right now, right? But Dr. Oz is now in charge of Medicaid and Medicare, and he's talking about overhauling that stuff.
That's
I guess he's not in charge of it yet. He will be.
I'm gonna give you some more context. Okay. This is August 31st is this article I'm reading now about this Times article. So this is back in. Now, the timing of this news article. So again, this is before Trump won. This is back in August. The timing of this new article from Time magazine is suspicious as it follows closely on the heels of Kennedy's decision, RFK, to endorse Donald Trump with a promise to make America healthy again. Literally one day after RFK, this is another comment, brings the national health crisis into focus through the Trump campaign, Time magazine posted the article, "What if ultra-processed foods aren't as bad as you think?" So it's the day after RFK through Trump said he wants to take on ultra-processed foods.
All right, so the timing is a little questionable for sure.
Questionable. That is...
that's weird.
Again, it comes down to this culture that we have created in America, and unfortunately on both sides, where you have to just support whatever your side says and go against whatever the other side says, even if that means it's flipping. Right? Because go back 10 years, let's say, and who were the biggest people against vaccines? It was generally on the left. It was in places like California, like in Oregon, where they were pushing back really hard in very liberal places. Jump to COVID, all of a sudden, liberal left-leaning people tend to be the most like pro-vaccine, whereas the more conservative people are the ones who are saying don't get vaccines. Whereas before they were the ones getting vaccines.
And this has happened with dozens of major issues over the years. And it's, again, it goes back to what we talked about on our political episodes of how we become so partisan,
right?
Where policy no longer matters. Right. I just have to be different than you, which might actually tie into what we'll talk about as our main topic today a little bit.
I think it will.
Yeah.
Another example I think of is you go back to like the early 2000s with W as president. And in general, most people viewed the Republican Party as the more hawkish, war-leaning party, where we were the ones who were out to get you into war. And now, look at what's happening right now with like Ukraine and things like that. That's mostly supported, again, by the left side. And Trump's whole business is let's get out of war. We're not going to go to war. It's not going to be that. So, again, we just see things.
How the turntables.
Exactly. Last thing I'll say, and this will get us into maybe our next segment, maybe not. I'm reminded of a story I heard from a pastor was talking about how he was speaking at a like a convention thing with specifically for pastors. Okay. And this pastor tells a story about how somewhere in his talk it came up the issue of like alcohol and drinking. And so this pastor was saying, you know, we know from the Bible drunkenness is wrong, but there's nothing wrong with drinking inherently. You know, don't get drunk, blah, blah, blah. And another pastor came up to him after the talk and said, well, I think you're wrong. The Bible clearly says you should never drink anything. It's alcohol is always bad. And this pastor said, well, you know, I don't think so. And like Jesus turned water into wine. Jesus probably drank. At the Last Supper, there was wine. And this other pastor said, well, then Jesus was wrong.
What?
And it makes me think, when you get to this thing where it's like, this is what I'm going to put everything in, to the point where you're saying, so I've got to say either this thing is, my belief on this is right, or Jesus, and I pick this thing, you got to reevaluate. Right. And so it's the weird ways that we entrench ourselves, but then seemingly can just flip to some other side. It strikes me as a weird world we live in. So let's move ahead out of the news. Unless you had any other news you wanted to talk about. Oh, did you watch the Mike Tyson fight? That's the other big news, right?
Yes.
It was really boring.
Yes. And most likely rigged, in the sense that part of Tyson's contract probably said you can't destroy. Because Jake Paul, if you look at like all of his training videos, Mike Tyson, dude was fast. He was moving. He looked good.
Yeah.
When he walked out, he looked sad.
Yeah.
He looked like he was already defeated. Going from like, for how old is he? 58?
58.
Yeah. 58, 59, something like that. Going from how good he looked in his training videos to how sad he looked walking out. And then like takes a punch, hits Paul, and has just a wide open shot, which if you look at any other fight Tyson's ever done, he has taken that knocked him out. He didn't take it.
That's weird. But why rig it?
Money. It was all for money. I mean, it's Jake Paul, right?
Yeah,
Jake
but he
Paul
got money regardless, right? He didn't get paid more if he won.
Well, Jake Paul, because he's the one that set it all up. It was probably, I don't want to be embarrassed. This is going to be better for me to be able to say I beat Mike Tyson, one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, but Mike Tyson, I mean,
it was a lose-lose for Jake Paul, honestly. Like, this was a really big mistake because either he beat up someone 30 years older than him.
Yeah, good job.
Or he lost to someone 30 years older than him.
Either way, that's a bad headline.
So, honestly, the end result of the fight, had it been a good fight, probably was the best case scenario for Jake because he won, but it wasn't by knockout. It wasn't. It was just by a decision because he got a few more.
Beating an old man.
But most of the commentary I've seen posted is everyone's just mad.
It was just, and it showed because Netflix did this like live, and they suffered with their streaming.
It was bad.
It did not work.
Yep.
Now Netflix looks like they're trying to get into the live streaming as like a thing.
Yeah.
Like they're doing Christmas Day football on Netflix.
On Netflix, interesting.
Right. So that means you don't have to have a NFL subscription or whatever. You can just watch it on Netflix.
Right, but you do have to have a Netflix subscription.
You have to have Netflix, but everybody has Netflix.
Do they?
No.
Do you? Listener?
Write us podcast at dfchurch.com. Last thing we'll say about the news then. As a Christian, is it okay to watch a boxing match where people are, the whole point is just to hurt the other person?
I mean, is it to hurt them?
Well, because like you're hitting them.
Right, but...
And your goal is to knock them unconscious or at least knock them down.
Yeah, so I generally don't watch a lot of boxing. But this I thought was intriguing, and so I wanted to watch it.
And actually the fight before, and this kind of informs that question.
Was the real headline.
Was really good.
Yeah.
And these two women fighting. But it was like, one of them accidentally looked like head-butted the other one, and her whole head was like split open.
I didn't watch that fight, but I heard about it and how it was like awesome. The real headline.
Yeah. And so here's the thing, though. Like, as a Christian, that was violent. There was blood everywhere. They were punching each other. But that was the entertaining one. I felt like I was
Right.
back in
So
Gladiator times.
The Jesus juke is, well, have you ever read the Bible? There's violence and blood in there.
Yeah.
And you read that and study it and do deep dives into all the details of it. Yeah, I don't think there's anything inherently evil, because for the most part, the boxers, like when they're fighting, it's not a hate filled thing, right? They're not doing it out of rage and anger and hate, because in that situation, I would say, no, as Christians, we need to like stop that, right? And seek the reconciliation, and as much as it's up to you, live at peace with everyone type of thing. But with boxing as a sport, I'm not going to judge someone who, as a Christian with clear conscience, is watching it because it's entertaining as a sport. Because I think for the most part, at least in the matches I've seen or the people I've talked to, when like something bad happens as a result of that violence, they're usually grieving over it.
Right.
Like there was one fight where, and I don't remember if this was MMA or boxing, but a guy got hit like kind of towards the back of the head a little bit because he was falling like as someone was swinging hard, and severe brain damage.
Oh no.
And like is severely disabled as a result of it now for the rest of his life. And so
That's
like
sad.
No one cheered that on.
Right.
No one was excited that happened. The person who made the punch was actually devastated over it. And so like I think it's similar to other contact sports. You think of football, where that is a pretty violent sport, right? The whole goal on the defensive side is to knock someone down as quick and hard as you can.
Them. But I think, the goal is to get the ball over the
that's
the end
fair,
zone,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the violence is incidental to that.
I mean, I don't know.
It's like hockey. The goal isn't the fight, but they're sure
depends
fun
on
when
who
they
you ask.
happen.
Depends on who you ask.
Well, no, that's the goal of me watching.
There are some people who like are put on teams as like the enforcer,
but
which is hilarious.
They don't. At the end of it, they don't say, "Hey, the Avs got into 3 more fights and got some better punches in and knocked out more teeth." They're
so
the
they
winners.
win.
Right. It's not the goal of the sport.
Yeah.
You said, your Jesus juke. If we read the Bible, it's violent, and it's a weird thing where if they were to make an accurate movie of the Bible, we wouldn't watch it.
No, it'd be hard R.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that we're okay reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think ultimately with watching quote unquote violent sports, it's going to come down to a conscience issue, right? Same thing we talk about with alcohol.
Right.
There are clear things in the Bible forbidding drunkenness,
Yes.
but not necessarily alcohol itself. And so clear conscience, there's nothing in the Bible that talks about a boxing match, boxing as sport, and whether or not we should watch it.
I'm pretty sure in Samson, the judges. Just kidding.
Was that a boxing match, or did he just like beat people up?
He beat people up.
And we cheered him on.
Yeah.
Like when we read that,
He
we're like,
killed
way to
people.
go, Samson. He killed people, and
A
we
lot of
celebrate
them.
that.
And he tore a
It's
lion
kind of
in
interesting.
half.
Yeah.
As one does a young goat, I believe it says, which is the funniest thing because is that a common enough thing to do? I tore a lion like I would a young goat. How many young goats are we tearing in half that's our reference
I mean, it
point?
averages about 1 every 6 weeks.
So let's go into what have you read in the Bible this week that has been interesting to
Well,
you?
nothing about boxing.
Has it been anything interesting
Yeah.
that
Well,
has jumped out at you?
we're kind of wrapped up Ezekiel. And so I think you were mentioning how you've been studying that kind of separately.
Yep, I've
So
been
you're
going
actually slightly ahead of where we were in the
Well, actually,
read-through
but
in
if
your
you
plan.
wrapped up Ezekiel, I'm still in Ezekiel.
Oh, so
I'm
we
going a little
moved
bit
quickly.
I'm going
Yeah,
a little.
yeah.
I'm taking my time through it.
So there's just some really cool imagery there, and it's fun to compare and contrast with other portions of scripture and kind of think through that. Acts was pretty cool. We're almost done with Acts now. And it's interesting. What stood out to me this morning, yesterday, all my days are the same. In Acts, I want to say it was 25, 26. who Paul is talking with Agrippa, maybe?
Agrippa.
And he essentially says, like, how can I become a Christian?
Right.
And that word Christian stood out to me today.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because a lot of times, like, conversations are like, well, a Christian isn't in the Bible.
Right.
It's just maybe the idea of it. Or Christians are people who follow the Bible, but they're not in the Bible. And so, like, that word just really stood out to me this morning. And, like, I stopped for a minute. Did I really read that? Is that the word that just happened? So I looked it up. I looked at in other translations. I was like, wow, okay. It really is there. It's a real thing. I'm trying to find the exact verse for us.
I like that. Yeah, it was pretty early on that they were called Christians.
Yeah.
Little Christ.
Little Christ. Well, I know
it was originally kind of derogatory, right? Because the original church said, we're just followers of the way. That's what they said. Presumably from when Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That's a little.
Well, and followers of the way is
Right.
kind of an early phrase that was going. So Acts 26, verse 28, Agrippa replied to Paul, in a short time, I love this, in a short time you will persuade me to become a Christian.
I like it.
Yeah. And Paul's response, I wish to God that whether in a short or long time, not only you, but all who hear me today might become such as I am, except for these chains, because he was in chains at the time.
Yeah.
But I love that. It's like Agrippa knew there was something too compelling about Paul and his testimony that Agrippa knew that this is a message I can't resist. And Paul said, yeah, but
I love that.
no matter how long it takes, my hope is that everyone believes what I believe. And so there's an encouragement there for us as Christ followers. Is your hope with everyone you encounter that they would believe as you believe?
That's a good one.
Which then brings up another question.
Okay.
If everyone, and this is a question that is fun to ask and convicting to ask, if everyone in like your church lived and acted in public and private as you live and act in public and private, would you still want to be a part of that church community?
If everyone in your church lived and acted in public and private the way that you live and act in public and private, would you still want to be a part of that church?
So my hidden private sins, if I knew that everyone in my church was also sinning in that way, would I still, like, is that a Christian community that I think I want to be a part of? And that question's asked because it's one of those self-evaluation. Am I really living like Christ? Do I look like Christ? Are my thought processes, is my sadness towards my sin Christ honoring, or is it just kind of one of those things that I'm just going to brush on the rug, no one has to know, I'm fine with it? It's that whole God, you can have all of me except this one area of my life that I want to hang on to.
Interesting.
But then you think about, well, if everyone in my church was like that, like, I don't know if I want to be a part of that community.
Well, but I don't know, because I think everybody at our church is like that. There's nobody who doesn't sin, who doesn't have struggles, who doesn't have issues.
So let's just go with.
You should feel like we can all be there, but we don't need to be. We can be like helping each other.
Yeah, let me define it a little more. Yes, everyone struggles with sin. Everyone has sin. Everyone sins.
Right.
Is everyone unrepentant about their sin?
Are we? I guess underneath, and this makes me think of a TikTok I saw today. Are we living in a manner worthy of the gospel?
Right. That's the question that ultimately it comes down to.
So that's funny. Like I said, I just saw a TikTok and he related a story that I hadn't heard before, but it's really great. This apparently happened with Alexander the Great. Okay, so go back in your mind, Alexander the Great. And there's a guy who deserts the army. And he gets captured. He gets brought before Alexander, and he's going to be in trouble. And so Alexander's looking down at him, and he says, "Soldier, why'd you run away?" And he said, "Well, I was afraid. I didn't want to fight, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Well, okay." And now he's really freaked out because he knows the next thing is going to be like the pronouncement of execution for deserting. But Alexander says to him, "Okay, well, what's your name?" And the soldier doesn't answer. He says, "What is your name?" And he's like, I don't want to say. And Alexander the Great says, "What is your name?" And he says, "My name's Alexander." And he gets and Alexander the Great gets upset, and he comes close. He says, "What is your, what?" And he said, "Yeah, my name's Alexander." And Alexander the Great tells him, "Either change your name or change your behavior."
Ooh.
Right? So the idea is we're ambassadors of Christ.
Yeah.
we should be. Now, this isn't some sort of moralistic legalism of I'm going to obey this big checklist because I'm going to be
Right.
holy. But it's a time to self-reflect and say, like we talked about however long ago it was, yes, as a Christian, you're going to sin, but what's your posture towards it? What is your attitude? And what, if anything, needs to be changed or adjusted in your life?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's I think we've talked about this too, taking the Lord's name in vain
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean saying OMG, right?
Right.
It's actually more as someone who's claiming the name of Jesus,
Right.
but unrepentant about my sin. That's taking his name in vain. I'm not treating it worthy of the praise and respect that it's due. I love that. Either change your name,
right,
or
change your behavior.
Change your behavior. Yep.
And
yeah, you're right. It's not, Christianity is not about behavior modification. It's about a surrendered life to the gospel. And so I think that's super important for us to remember and encourage each other in.
Which takes us back to Ezekiel. Now, in the context, God is talking to Israel. So it's like our Jeremiah 29:11 thing. We got to look at the context, but the conceptual nature of this, where God says through Ezekiel to the people of Israel that he's going to take out their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh, right? And then they'll be able to obey and follow God. And it's the same thing. It's not we're going to follow all these rules so that God fixes us. God's going to fix us so that we can, in our love for him, live the way he wants us to live. Yeah, that's cool.
That's a good reminder.
You at home, email us podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com. Let us know one thing that God has been teaching you through his word lately.
Nice.
Let's jump into our main topic, Matt. Yeah. Now, like I said, next week, Thanksgiving. We're taking the week off. Yeah. Hopefully you are as well. Maybe you're going to be watching some football. Okay, quick aside. How on Thanksgiving in the modern streaming world, where do you watch something like the Thanksgiving football games? Are they on one of the streamers, or do you have to pay for like an extra NFL something or other?
You don't have to pay for the NFL something or other. First of all, you can still get channels over the air, like with
you
bunny
gotta
ears.
have like a digital antenna though.
But you can there's digital bunny ears still. Yeah. I don't have those.
I don't either.
But let's see, on Thanksgiving, I'm trying to think of who's hosting the game. CBS probably is, so it's on Paramount.
Oh, okay. So if I have Paramount Plus, I can watch it probably?
Yep. It'll be streamed
because
there.
I do know that a couple days ago, I had my parents over for dinner, and my dad was trying to find some football game on Sunday night, and it was on Peacock.
Yeah, because that's NBC's channel. That's their streaming service. Yeah.
So if it's on Paramount, I could watch. So on Thanksgiving, when I'm over at my mother-in-law's house, and we want to watch, what about the parade? The Thanksgiving Day parade? Will that
Macy's?
be on? Yeah.
I love that thing.
I know. This is the downside of our streaming future. It's like I've got most of the main ones right now, so I can log into one of them if it's there.
Peacock. It's an NBC show.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So we can watch the parade and the football games if we want.
Yeah. So we have Peacock at our house. So do I get that through my phone subscription?
I don't know.
I pay for like 2 streaming services.
Yeah.
And the rest I get through either my T-Mobile or because I bought an Apple computer one time or like whatever it is. And so it works out fine. And every now and then there's something's like, oh, what's that on? Oh, I don't have that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can usually find it eventually. But yeah, it's CBS.
Okay.
Peacock. That's where you're going to find all your cool things this Thanksgiving.
Good to know. Yeah. Now, as we go into Thanksgiving, and as you all go into Thanksgiving, we wanted to talk today a little bit about what it looks like in these difficult family dynamics and what oftentimes holidays, so we've got Thanksgiving, we've got Christmas, is when families come together, but that can also be a great source of stress and difficulty.
Yeah. I think it's important for us to recognize the beauty and fun of the holidays.
Yeah.
Right. Gathering together as family, the things that we're celebrating, but recognizing that it's not beauty for everyone. It's not fun for everyone. Sometimes it's super difficult because of hurt that's happened in the past. And then sometimes it's super awkward because of relationships we have with those extended family members that we are going to see.
Right.
And have these moments with.
And this is an issue, I think, any year, any time, these issues tend to crop up. But this year, I feel like there's the potential for it to be especially contentious because of the amount of people I have personally seen that are in my own family and friends who have basically said, because of politics, if you supported Trump, you are no longer welcome to have a relationship with me, essentially. And if those people are going to be at a family gathering, I don't know how that plays out. And so I think you listening and watching might be in a similar situation. In fact, I almost guarantee every family has people who supported either Trump or Harris. And so finding, like, I don't know if there's a family out there that's 100% one way when you get everybody all together. And finding that way, and the traditional wisdom has always been at gatherings and things like this, you don't talk politics, you don't talk religion, right? Those are the two topics you're supposed to avoid. But I think that has just made us unable to actually have intelligent discussions on these topics where we can disagree and still get along civilly because we just never talk about it instead.
Interesting. That's, you're kind of right. We've moved into an area of our family gatherings where we just don't bring up these like top 3 things that we're just not going to talk about at all. But in my experience, there's always someone who mentions something that then leads to that debate and that conversation. Or argument, really.
Right.
So what do we do, right? Like, that's the question. What do we do? It's going to happen in a couple days.
Especially as Christians, as followers of Jesus who are trying to represent him, potentially around family members who don't.
Yeah. So what happens right now, like today, as you're listening to this, knowing that this is going to happen in a few days or a few weeks or whenever your family gathering is, or even tomorrow over coffee because you're meeting your sister-in-law for lunch or whatever it is, right? Whoever the issue is with, it starts with prayer.
Okay.
Like always.
Yeah.
Okay. I think of Colossians 4:2, right? Being steadfast in our prayer. And it also says always being thankful. So in our prayers, remembering the things we're thankful for.
Right.
Which family, as difficult as they are, as frustrating as they can be, as much as you just don't want to talk to them, their family, when was the last time in your prayers you thanked God for that difficult family member? Right? And so like my attitude towards them matters. Do I love them?
Right.
Like, really, do I love them? And I'm not saying, do I have warm and fuzzy feelings? I'm saying, am I choosing self-sacrificially to place them above my own personal thoughts and ideas and opinions on stuff, right? That is so hard to do.
That's really hard to do.
So difficult. And I think of a parable Jesus shared. It's in Luke, but it says how he told this parable to remind his disciples to always be prayerful and not to lose heart, I think it says, right? And so I think that's an important part too, that not losing heart, right? Not giving up on that difficult family member, not even pre-giving up, right? Before the conversation, well, they're never going to change or it's just going to lead to a fight.
Right.
So yeah, I guess encouragement number 1 is prayer.
Yep.
Starting
Always
now,
pray.
Right?
Always pray.
Yep.
I think the second thing I would say is really get a good sense for yourself. Is your goal to win an argument? Is your goal to be right? Is your goal to basically, essentially justify why you think the way you do? And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Because even if you don't outright say that, like, really be honest with yourself. Is that what you're after? Because I think oftentimes we want to be right. We forget how to be compassionate. We forget how to love. We forget how to actually think about or consider or hear what somebody else's opinion is. Even if you don't agree with it, it's okay to try to understand where they're coming from. I think we've so much fall into this demonization of the other side, and this happens on both sides, where it's I'm right and you are not just wrong, but you are against me. You are against a lot of X, Y, or Z, and it just views this person who could be a friend or family as an enemy instead of a friend or family.
Right, man.
What does Paul say? If at all possible, live in
peace with everyone. As much as it's up
as
to
much
you.
as it's up to
Right.
you.
So your responsibility,
Romans
Romans
12:18.
Yep.
Yeah, I was looking up the. All right, so here Romans 12:18. He says, "Bless those who persecute." This is starting in 14. I'm sorry, and I'm reading ESV. "Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all." So I think that passage right there is like a perfect resting point for what do we do in these situations, right? What do we do when there's somebody who has said, I don't want relationship with you. I think you are dead to me. You have, come against me. They have positioned themselves as your enemy. Well, it says, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. So don't turn around and do the same thing back when you see this type of thing happening, if you see this type of thing happening. And in fact, as far as it is possible for you, be at peace with it.
Right.
Be a peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers.
Yeah.
Jesus says.
Yeah, that's good. I think one of the key things that we struggle with as humans is listening.
What?
Exactly. Right. So part of me pursuing that peace with that family member is I'm going to ask more questions than I give answers to, and I'm going to listen more than I talk. Right. Because a lot of times I think the frustration is, the assumption is, well, you're just an ignorant fool.
Right.
And there's no like seeking to understand. And I'm talking from both sides of this, right?
Definitely.
And there's no seeking to actually understand, well, where are you coming from? Why?
Right.
What life experience do you have that makes you think that? What's going on in your world? How can I support you and love you and represent Christ in the midst of this?
Right.
Right? Here's what stands out to me about the person and work of Jesus. He would frequently call out the religious people, but he would always call up the sinners. And what I mean by that is he would call them up out of that lifestyle of sin to a better life. He didn't call out the sin right away. Right? He would love them. He would lead them. He would guide them. He would direct them. He would encourage them. And then he would say, now go and sin no more.
Right.
It wasn't this judgment that would happen, except for those who claimed to be religious, right? And so like for me, as potentially like the Christian in this relationship, I assume we're talking about someone who maybe doesn't have the same beliefs or depth of beliefs.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
And so yeah, for me, it would be, well, let me understand where you're coming from. And then after I've sought understanding, if the opportunity arises because they've opened the door for it, then I can share what I believe and what I think. Right. I think the worst thing that we can do at these family gatherings when these types of, and it doesn't even have to be the big family gathering. This is a one-on-one conversation too with that person before or after or during the holiday season. But it's, once I've come to understand where you're coming from, why you think the way you think, if you've given me the opportunity, then I'm going to share and point you towards Christ in the midst of it, which that's a difficult part because I want to argue you towards my way of thinking,
right?
Not love you towards Christ. We need to be loving people towards Christ, not argue. Because I think of that story you just shared of the conference or whatever, and the guy was speaking. He's like, well, then Jesus is wrong.
Right.
You're just trying to argue towards your way of thinking, and that's
Exactly.
terrible. We need to not do that. And so, yeah, I think it's an important reminder for us is what matters more.
Right.
Winning that argument or restoring a family relationship and restoring a relationship with that person with God.
Right.
Hopefully that matters more
Right.
than winning an argument for you.
Especially when oftentimes winning that argument is going to ultimately be a political answer. Not, and it's, we've talked so much about this conflation of Christianity with politics, but it's not, if I can convince them that the Republicans are right, they're going to be closer to Jesus. It sounds insane when you say it, but I think we treat it like that. It's like, if you're a Republican, you must be a Christian. If you're not a Republican, you must not be a Christian. Yeah. Therefore, let's try to argue you to Jesus by telling you who Trump is. I don't like that. It's terrible. Whether or not you support him or don't support him, it's like, let's as Christians be careful.
100%.
So, as we kind of bring this up, what is like the one big takeaway of like, here's what you should do next?
Well, the big takeaway is prayer.
Start in prayer.
Yeah.
Maybe prayer, and maybe spend a little bit of time in that Romans passage this week. Yeah. Just getting into God's word, letting it speak to you as you speak to God.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. So it sounds like both those things are, I need to make sure that me and God, we're good.
Yeah.
Like I am pursuing what's going to bring him the honor and glory, not help me be the king of my family gathering because I won the argument.
Right.
And so, here's what's really cool. I saw this quote. When God wants you to grow, he makes you uncomfortable. And then there's another quote as a part of this that I was reading from Finley Peter Dune, 1867 to 1936. He coined this phrase that could be much more aptly spoken of Jesus. He came to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And so I think as a Christian, those uncomfortable conversations that we're going to have can be really good for us because they give us the opportunity to grow in our relationship with God and our dependence on him, and to grow in our connection and relationships with other people, which he's called us to, right? So he's going to put us in uncomfortable situations, potentially to grow our ability to lead and love well and point people towards him. Right. And so I don't want us as, family members to avoid that discomfort because it's going to make it so awkward. Right? Because you're going to go to that family gathering and you're going to be sitting across the table from the person that said, I want nothing to do with you if blah, blah, blah. Right. And that's uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's very
Embrace the uncomfortable. If the opportunity arises, have that conversation. Like, hey, I saw your post. I am so sorry that you have to word it well, right? I'm so sorry that you're so hurt over this, right? No, that's not the way. But man, I sense a lot of hurt in that. I'd love to hear more about it. Tell me why. Yeah. Because I think a lot of times we post on social media either wanting sympathy or wanting an argument, but not necessarily wanting understanding and conversation. Right. And so it's almost the whole kill them with kindness thing, right? When you say, I'm so sorry that happened to you, can you tell me more? Yeah. All of a sudden it's like, oh, those walls that I was already putting up before you even approached me, all of a sudden now maybe I'm going to scoot those aside a little bit, open up and have a conversation. Because honestly, for most of us, and I want to preface it with that because not everyone has family dynamics like this, but for most of us, I think that generally speaking, our family members want things to be okay between each other. Right. There's the exception. And for that, if you're in that situation, I'm so sorry. Let us know so we can join you in praying for that reconciliation to happen. But I think for most family members, they recognize that, dang, I want things to be right. I don't know how to do that, or I'm too prideful to go and apologize for it. But ultimately, I do want things to be right. So for us as Christians to take that first step towards peace is huge. Right. And potentially relationship changing and family gathering changing, because you do that at Thanksgiving, then Christmas is going to be golden.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Fun stuff.
Well, let's go real quick before we close out today into some of our listener comments and feedback. Now, again, you can email us at podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com. Like nobody did this week. We didn't get any emails this week there, but we did get some comments that I want to go into on our other social media. So the first one on our TikTok page. All right. We last week, if you remember, did a Would You Rather episode where we gave some scenarios. For instance, one of them I said, would you rather spend 40 days on Noah's Ark or 40 years in the wilderness with Moses? Now, apparently that was just a very offensive way of framing it to this one person who said, actually, they were on the ark for longer than 40 days.
Actually.
And now I want to say, I know. And all right, so I'm going to tell you some of these comments real quick. First of all, his first one said, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. They spent about 1 year on the ark. And again, I didn't say anything about would you rather spend the entirety of the time on the ark that they do in the Bible.
Right.
It was just a play on the 40 days of rain versus the 40 years in the
wandering,
desert.
Yeah.
This is the 240s.
Right. And
It
did
could've
they
been
actually
any 40
wander for
days.
exactly 40 years?
Right,
Was it
right.
approximate? I mean, come on, man.
And I said, well, so in this scenario, you're just on the ark for the rain, I guess, is what I replied to this guy. And he said, well, that's what I heard y'all say. Obviously, I know the length of time they were on the ark. Sounds like y'all didn't, because you didn't add any caveats.
That'll teach us not to add the caveats.
And then somebody else replied to this one, get to see and interact with every type of animal on earth. Sign me up for the ark. Yeah, the smell might get bad after 40 days, but seeing every animal would be so cool. And the same guy replied to this person. It was around a year they were on the ark. It rained for 40 days. And then this person said, well, more time to play with the animals. And then somebody else said, I said ark right away. And then somebody else said same. And this guy again said, a year on the ark with animals appeals to you? Okay. So why bring this up? Do I just want to talk about the actually, maybe, but it's a bigger thing here. Why do we as humans feel the need to respond this way with this type of attitude online?
Yeah, because we want to be right and want everyone to know how right we are and how wrong everyone else is. I've actually found myself a couple times this week. I typed something out on social media as like a comment reply, and I was like, no,
I'm going
just
to
delete it.
stop.
Like, I don't think anyone has ever changed their beliefs based upon a comment on social media. And so is that worth it? Is that being a good witness towards Jesus? I don't think so. This same guy even like duetted our post, right? Which is like he shared it with his own thing.
With the text.
For his own page with like the face palm emoji being like, what did you say? It rained for 40 days. They were on the ark for a year, face palm. Yes. We all know.
Right. Like this is where I'm like, what
was the point? Yeah, it was.
Now,
I don't know. Maybe he woke up that morning and chose violence.
I don't know. Should we ask him to be a guest on our podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we can ask him, what do you wish Christians actually knew? Because he seems to wish that we knew it rained for 371 days.
I love it.
Approximately.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It's fun.
Now that's all right. So again, if you haven't watched this video, the context of it is I asked this kind of a lighthearted would you rather question, the 40 days versus the 40 years. Matt answers. It's not, there's nothing very deep or super crazy happening in here in terms of spiritual commentary. Context for what's about to happen.
Right.
The same video is posted on YouTube, just that clip.
Right, where I said the ark. I would choose the ark
ark
rather than 40 years of wandering with all the grumbling that happened in the desert. Like those are the words that I used in this video.
And a comment from Jesus We Pray says, seems like one is a true believer, one is a fake true believer. Now, what's a fake true believer?
What's a fake true believer? Because either you're a true believer or you're a fake believer, but a fake true believer?
A fake true believer.
Is that a double?
Yeah. And then he says, but I'm not the one who will judge that. But I think you just did, dude. Like that is
I love it. I love it.
If you want to try to call one of us out,
just do it
off another. But like if it's a video that makes sense, if
right.
we're sitting here talking about how we shouldn't put our hope in America first and our kingdom is in heaven and all that, let's say. And that maybe upsets you and you want to call us out. I would understand. I would think you're crazy. I would understand. From this video, I don't know how this guy gets it. So I said, wait, which one do you think is which? Because he didn't really specify. He just said one is a fake and one is a true believer. Again, based off a very small sample. He says, personally, brother on the right has it. Now, I know as I'm looking at it, I'm on the right because I can do it like that. But again, this video, was it stage right?
Right. I'm in the right of the room, but you're on the right of the screen.
Depending on stage right or audience right.
So I'm stage right, you're audience right.
On this video, it was cutting in on the close-up of each of us. So how do you even know which is where? And then
it was good. It was good.
He did say, I don't. Okay. I said, dang, I better let him know. This is what I said to him. And then he said the right. No, you said the right, black sweatshirt or blue, yellow sweater. We were trying to clarify.
Right.
And this guy says, I don't love that you haven't given yourself to the Lord 100%. And then God will let him know because I said, I'm going to let him know. No word that comes out of thy mouth is allowed to pass through him. I'm not going to debate with anybody. Jesus is the truth. Our Father is the Almighty, and I'm filled with the Holy Spirit. So get at me. And I said we agree. Like, this is one of those. Was I engaging fruitlessly? Maybe. But I was so confused.
Right. I just wanted to know what do you mean?
What are you getting this from? So, if you'd like to leave us a comment on one of our YouTube videos, on one of our TikTok, Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, wherever you see this content posted, we would love to engage with you. Will we make fun of you? Well, I don't think we'll outright make fun of you, but will we call into question what you said? Yeah, if it doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. We will seek clarity.
We will seek clarity.
Yeah.
But for today, that is all the time we have. But as you go out, as you go into the world, you go into your community, especially as you go into family and friends time to celebrate Thanksgiving in this next week, just remember, how are you representing God to them? How are you going to be maybe the only church they ever see? And how can we, through prayer, through Bible study, how can we be equipped and ready to shine a light into a dark world? With that, we won't see you next week, but we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Bye, guys.